Hi everyone, my name is Jack, and like a lot of you, Pokemon has ruined my life, in the best way. I lie in bed awake at night thinking of new ways to play the games. I can't learn new things because my brain is already full of useless Pokemon knowledge. And I've spent countless hours of my free time immersed in the world of Pokemon in some way. I've played the series on repeat since I was 10 years old. Not a lot of series are as replayable as Pokemon, and what keeps it fresh for me is using Pokemon that are often overlooked or not very strong. So, I wanted to start a series of videos where I show underrated and overlooked Pokemon some love, and share how I would improve their viability, or just make them more popular by throwing in some fun ideas. And who better to kick this series off with than Chikorita, the poster child of a Pokemon that has been done incredibly dirty. I really like this Pokemon, it's so cheerful. Its Pokedex entries always go in depth about how its soothing aromas can bring peace to those around it and heal sickness. As someone who experiences headaches often, the Chikorita line was always one of the Pokemon I would actually want as a pet in the real world. But I want to remind everyone why we're here today. Chikorita is horrible and pathetic. It's embarrassing. I hope that leaf on its head means it can rely on sunlight for food, because in Johto, this Pokemon will be out of a job and living on the streets. Chikorita is clearly outclassed by the other two starter options. How could this waste of my carbon dioxide expect to survive in this socioeconomic climate? Most people would agree that Chikorita is the worst starter of all time, and you know what? They are right. Okay, maybe I went a little too far there. To be fair, this isn't completely Chikorita's fault. It has to go through circumstances that are beyond its control. See, Chikorita is a grass-type Johto starter, and Johto is the most anti-grass region there is. Grass is either weak to or resisted by 5 of the 8 gyms, and really only helps out against one of the Elite 4, and is completely useless in the champion fight, where 4 of Lance's Pokemon are quad resistant to grass. But even that doesn't tell the whole story. Morty, for example, is a ghost-type trainer which is neutral to grass, but he actually uses exclusively ghost poison types which resist Chikorita's grass attacks, again making it next to useless in this fight. Chikorita rarely has time to catch its breath in Johto. From the moment you choose it as your starter, it is just one beating after another. The times where Chikorita actually shines are few and far between. There's like Union Cave, which has a couple of rock-type trainers, the route on the way to Cyanwood, Chuck's Poliwrath, Bruno's Onyx? Oh no. As you can see, poor Chikorita's got it really rough. Yet another huge thing holding it back is the fact that there are 2 clearly superior starter Pokemon in Totodile and Cyndaquil, who both become solid offensive attackers and can become a linchpin of any trainer's Pokemon team, especially considering the mediocrity that is the Johto Regional Dex. Typhlosion is probably the best fire type in the game, and fire types in general are pretty rare, so getting one early on is a huge upside no matter what game you're playing. Totodile may have more competition with a huge population of water types, but its perfect availability and great move pool make it a top tier Pokemon for your team. Chikorita being born in the unforgiving Johto region and outclassed by its 2 counterparts leave it as one of the most unfairly treated Pokemon of all time. So I wanted to show the Chikorita line some love and share some changes that I would make to this starter line to make it an actually acceptable option in HeartGold SoulSilver, without deviating from what the Pokemon and its design stand for. For example, it would be easy to slap a great secondary type like Fairy or Dragon on this evolution line and call it a day, but for better or for worse, the Johto starter trio are all monotype. That was the design intent, and I'm going to keep it that way. If we ever get a Johto Legends game, of course I would love to see a Grass Fairy Meganium finally get redemption, but for now, I'm going to be following what I believe the developers intended. I also want to make a disclaimer and say I don't think it's possible to make Chikorita the best starter option. Let's be realistic here. No matter how hard this little guy tries, it will always finish in last place. I'm not changing any of the boss fights in the game or the type chart, so grass types in Johto will always have the odds stacked against them. I'm simply trying to make Chikorita a viable option for an in-game playthrough. And I'll be giving a slight nod to Nuzlocke as well, as these are my favorite ways to play Pokemon. Lastly, and I've gone back and forth on this, I will not be changing the Pokemon's base stats. Though I may do this for future videos, Game Freak has confirmed that base stats are reflective of a Pokemon's design. Though it would probably be better for Chikorita to favor one offensive stat in particular, Chikorita was designed as a grass-type tank with high but balanced HP and defensive stats, and options for both physical and special attacking. At the end of this video, I want little Chikorita to look in the mirror after his glow up and still recognize himself, if that makes sense. So with all that out of the way, let's get started. Based on its Pokédex entries, Chikorita is clearly a gentle, innocent little soul who doesn't enjoy fighting very much. As a result, its moveset puts it in a supportive role, doing passive damage with moves like Poison Powder, reducing damage with Reflect, and healing with Synthesis. These moves do a pretty good job reflecting Chikorita's personality, but don't do it a ton of favors gameplay-wise. Chikorita learns Razor Leaf at level 6, which is a solid stab move that it gets very early, but it won't get anything better until level 22. And if a Pokemon resists Grass, which again, many do, there's nothing Chikorita can do to defend itself. I want to take a look at Snivy, the Grass-type starter of Generation 5. Snivy is another soft candidate for worst starter of all time, but it's really not close. Unova is much less aggressive to Grass types, with many boss fights being at least neutral or even weak to Grass. But the main difference is that the Snivy line receives the moveset to hold its own even against foes it's weak to, getting moves like Leech Seed, Growth, and Coil, and also strong attacking moves to complement it like Leaf Blade and the early reusable Return TM. With these tools, Snivy and its evolutions are perfectly capable of soloing gyms even in a hardcore Nuzlocke setting, like Charon, Roxy, and even Berg with the right preparation and Leech Seed Growth setup. So using Snivy's toolkit as a soft model to buff Chikorita seems like a good place to start. So, I've opted to swap out Poison Powder at level 9 for Sleep Powder instead. Not only is Sleep Powder more reflective of Chikorita's cheerful presence, but I feel like putting the opponent to sleep is a better option than slow poison damage, especially when combined with the other form of passive damage I'm going to replace it with. At level 12, Chikorita will learn Leech Seed instead of Synthesis, which I'll probably push back to a much later level. It always struck me as odd that Pokemon like Chikorita and Hoppip learn this move so early when most other Pokemon like Torterra get it in the level 30s. It's a pretty strong move that feels more satisfying when you have more HP to heal. So anyway, Leech Seed. This is a move that I feel can redeem almost any grass type. And yeah, I'm looking at you, Sunflora. Getting a Leech Seed off makes it so much easier to set up sweeps for yourself or even other team members because you are doing passive damage and healing by 1/8 of the opponent's HP every turn. Even when Chikorita is matched up against a Pokemon that resists Grass, it can still get off Leech Seed and Sleep Powder before switching into a better matchup and likely tank the hits necessary to do so because of its natural bulk. And lastly, I'm going to pull down Reflect to 1 level to level 17 as a slight nod to hardcore Nuzlockers, bringing this move below Bugsy's level cap. Bayleaf is bulky enough to tank a U-turn, and setting up Reflect to support its teammates can prove to be pretty helpful in this fight. I like keeping Reflect in our moveset because it really shows how Chikorita is a team player, increasing the entire team's stats, not just its own. As Chikorita evolves into its new form, Bayleaf, at level 16, we see that it becomes a little more adept at afflicting status on the opponent. It becomes much larger in size and takes the shape of a dinosaur, giving the implication that this species has been around for a long time. I don't feel like Magical Leaf really does anything to reflect what Bayleaf is all about in any way, it's just a slightly stronger special grass type attack, so I'm going to swap it with Giga Drain, which at least plays into Bayleaf's theme of healing, and allows Bayleaf to stall opponents much better, especially now that we've removed Synthesis. I don't feel like Giga Drain is too strong a move at this point in the game, because it's only 60 base power in Gen 4, which is the same as Magical Leaf. I'm also going to give it access to Ancient Power instead of Natural Gift at level 26. It being a dinosaur and all, it should be pretty self-explanatory. It's even one of our egg moves, so why not actually let us use it in an in-game playthrough? The Rock type actually covers 4 out of Grass's 5 weaknesses in Fire, Flying, Bug, and Ice. So it's good to know that when facing even a resisted opponent, Bayleaf won't be completely helpless. And also, Natural Gift TMs are obtainable in infinite supply at the Goldenrod department store, so if you still want Natural Gift, you can still get it, but expect some side-eye from your family members when you go home for Thanksgiving. At level 32, we evolve into Meganium, a gentle giant with the ability to calm aggressive feelings of those around it. Usually, upon evolving, Meganium learns Petal Dance, which is kind of its bread and butter move, but I'm gonna make a pretty big change here and switch it with Earth Power, a move that Meganium previously could not learn. but I feel that Earth Power is reflective of Meganium's massive size without being aggressively violent. Meganium can already learn Earthquake by TM, but I want to give it a slight lean towards a special moveset. I will push Petal Dance up to level 43 for a stronger grass type option should the player desire it, but at this point I think Giga Drain is doing us just fine. Another massive change for Meganium comes at level 34 when we will swap it out for a much better setup move, Calm Mind. This will allow Meganium to set up and become a true offensive threat, boosting our special attack and special defense, all while doing passive healing via Leech Seed and Giga Drain. I think this gives Meganium a viable strategy for pretty much any boss fight that the late game has to offer. From here on, the rest of our level up moveset won't be changed too much. As previously mentioned, I'm going to give it Synthesis at level 46 so it has access to it for the Elite Four, and push Body Slam to level 50. All moves after that will be unchanged, as I feel like these moves don't really matter too much. By then, your Pokemon's 4 move slots are probably determined already, and design-wise, they all reflect Meganium well enough. However, I will be giving Meganium access to Seed Bomb, Growth, and Nature Power via the move relearner at level 1. This is going to give us a physical option should your Meganium have a physical attack boosting nature. Seed Bomb is a little bit on the violent side for a passive Pokemon like Meganium, but it seemed more appropriate than Leaf Blade, and we can actually learn this move already via the move tutor. Side note that Meganium also has access to Swords Dance via the Goldenrod Game Corner, so physical Meganium is definitely a viable option. Growth seemed like a good move reflective of Meganium's giant size, coupled with the fact that it boosts physical and special attack, which works because our offensive stats are so well balanced. For those who want to run a mixed attacker set, this is for you. Lastly, I threw in Nature Power just for fun. I can totally believe that this massive grass dinosaur can harness power from whatever the adjacent landscape provides for it, and should make for some fun, zany moves like Rock Slide or Tri Attack. I did originally want to fit all these moves in our level up moveset, but I didn't want to remove any more from the existing list, and didn't want to just jam them all in there. For the most part, a Pokemon should only learn a new move every 3 to 4 levels. Lastly, I would like to make one minor change to Meganium's Learn set via TM, giving it access to Dragon Pulse. This seems like a no-brainer for several reasons. Meganium is a dinosaur, so it's feasible for it to have some connection to dragons, and it can already learn Outrage via the move tutor at the Battle Frontier, but Outrage seems like way too violent of a move for this kind and loving Pokemon. Dragon Pulse really helps out Meganium by giving it some kind of counter to Lance, where previously it had virtually nothing it could do. The old Meganium would have been a burden to bring into the Elite Four, but now I think I've given it the tools to hold its own against every single one of them. But let's test that. Let's do a run through of Pokemon SoulSilver to see how the new and improved Chikorita line truly fares. I will be keeping Chikorita below each leader's level cap for all boss fights. I'm trying to emulate an average playthrough, so I will be using a full team, but will be leaning on Chikorita as much as possible to keep it in the spotlight. The script from this point on is being written as I go along. Alright, let's do this. So starting off naturally, I choose Chikorita as my starter. I name him Nolan after my houseplant. He has a serious nature, pretty solid. Everything is normal up to level 9 where we get Sleep Powder, and at level 12 we learn the all-important Leech Seed, which we can take into the fight at Sprout Tower, probably the first hurdle we'll have to face in our run. The fight actually goes pretty well. We can outdamage the Bellsprout with Tackle as long as we get our Leech Seed off. We can outdamage the Bellsprout with Tackle, and as long as we get our Leech Seed off, we can keep pace with the Hoot Hoot's Peck for an easy win. But next up is Falkner, and this fight was actually harder than I was expecting. The Pidgey is easy enough as we wear him down with Leech Seed, and I do sack my Pidgey to shake off the sand attacks, which again, this is allowed. We're trying to emulate a regular playthrough, not a solo run. Once we switch back in, we get off our Leech Seed. Gust hits us really hard, but we just barely survive a second one and get off our Sleep Powder. We definitely miss Synthesis in this fight, but the passive healing plus a long enough sleep seals us the win. Okay, on to Bugsy, who is probably the hardest fight in the game for us. We can barely survive a non-crit U-turn from Scyther, and Bayleaf really doesn't do much in this fight besides set up Leech Seed and put things to sleep. I wasn't really expecting us to do much more than that. I have to mostly rely on Geodude here. There is a lot of switching in this fight, but that's just to keep us under the next level cap of 19 for Whitney. But before Whitney is the second rival fight. Surprisingly, we sweep this entire fight, despite his entire team resisting us. Leech Seed is truly a busted move. With it, we whittled down his Ghastly and Zubat, and his Quilava just decided to not use fire types even when it had the chance, giving us a satisfying win. Okay, on to the Whitney fight. I decided to ditch Reflect for a Swords Dance TM from the game corner. After getting off Leech Seed on Clefairy and putting it to sleep, I max out my attack. Once Miltank comes out, I manage to dodge the Stomp flinch, get off the Leech Seed, and outdamage him for the win. This isn't a foolproof strategy for a Nuzlocke, as we could have been flinched to oblivion, but there's really no way around the RNG if Miltank outspeeds us. For the record, Reflect probably would have been fine here, we could have just stalled it out. We weren't getting hit too hard. Third rival fight admittedly goes pretty terribly considering his entire team resists us, but because of Leech Seed, we can at least take out the Ghastly and the Zubat, but we're no match for Quilava when paralyzed. It doesn't really bode well for future rival fights or Morty considering even a mere Ghastly is still a threat to us. Okay, Morty time. This fight goes okay as we actually take out 3 of his Pokemon including his Gengar before his final Haunter finishes us off. We finished the fight with another team member, but overall I'm pretty happy with how this fight went. Yeah, we had to switch a couple times to shake off curses, but hey, at least this nightmare of an early game is finally over for us. In hindsight, I could have given us Ancient Power at level 25 so we had it before the level cap, but let this be a note that I will be sticking to the learn set I set up before embarking on each run. I will make little notes like this to point out changes I'd make next time though. Nevertheless, we have Ancient Power now and are fully committing to being a special attacker. On that note, the Chuck fight goes pretty well. His Primeape tries to set up double team, but we're holding a wide lens from the game corner so we still hit through. His Poliwrath manages to land 1 Focus Punch, which does way more than I thought it would. I swear, I thought Bayleaf was bulkier. Regardless, we put him to sleep and whittle him down for the win. Right after that, we evolve into Meganium at level 32 and learn Earth Power. I decided to get rid of Ancient Power since Leech Seed and Sleep Powder are both pretty helpful and I don't want to lose them. I guess Ancient Power didn't really help us much in the end. Oh well. Not every move in a Pokemon's learn set has to be useful. Okay, I immediately regret saying that because next up is the Rocket Hideout where we have to fight a bunch of Zubats and Coughings with Levitate. I definitely wish I had Ancient Power now. I guess we've created the conundrum of wishing we had more than 4 move slots, which I guess is a good problem to have. Anyway, on to price. We have Calm Mind now, so this fight is free. A couple Calm Minds is all it takes to sweep his entire team with Giga Drain. Great. Hopefully we get a lot more fights like this in the late game. And next up is Jasmine, who goes just as well. Earth Power one-shots the Magnemite, but I did get a little cocky going for Giga Drain on the Steelix and had to rely on an Iron Tail dodge. Still an easy fight nonetheless. With our new moveset, Meganium has become a really solid Pokemon in the mid-game. Hopefully we can keep it up, but we've got a lot more Rocket fights and another rival fight on the horizon. The fight against Rocket admin Petrol goes pretty well, although we do end up running out of Giga Drains because his Coughing loved to use Smokescreen on us, so I have to switch into another party member to finish off the last Coughing, but I feel like we held our own well enough. Next for us is the 4th fight against Silver, and I love how well this fight goes. We use every single one of our new moves against his team, even though, again, every single one of his team members is either resistant to us or has a super effective move against us. We're able to chip away at the Golbat with Leech Seed as we set up with Calm Mind and sweep the rest of his team with Giga Drain and Earth Power. I'm really glad we're starting to see progress as the rival fights were the ones giving us the most trouble early on. The fight with Archer goes well too. I probably won't show these Rocket fights in future runs, but I am here because all the fights are usually impossible with regular Chikorita, so I want to show that they are indeed possible now. Pretty much every large fight in this game is a challenge for Chikorita, but now we have an answer to his Houndour and Houndoom with Earth Power, and luckily he sends in his Coughing second so we can heal ourselves a bit with Giga Drain. Finally, the last gym leader, Claire. We can set up on her Gyarados since Dragon Rage doesn't really do too much after Leech Seed. Her Dragonair does paralyze us, but they still can't do too much since they're special attackers and we've already boosted our special defense with Calm Mind. Even her Kingdra can barely touch us unless it gets a sniper crit, which it doesn't. So we win. Great. Hopefully Lance goes just as well, but I am a bit skeptical. After the Dragon's Den storyline, Claire gives us the Dragon Pulse TM, which again, we can learn now and hopefully it'll come in handy later. On to the final rival fight. This one unfortunately isn't as easy as the last one because he leads with Sneasel now, who lowers our speed with Icy Wind, so his whole team outspeeds us. That means they can do really annoying things like confuse us and inflict curse. We managed to hit through confusion enough times though and seal the win. Okay, time for the Elite Four. My level cap going into this is 47 to match Karen's highest level Pokemon. The odds are definitely stacked against us for each of these 4 fights, so this is going to be our toughest challenge yet, but let's see how it goes. First off is Elite Four Will, and we are not off to a good start. He's pretty much the perfect counter to us because his lead Xatu has U-turn, so we can't just Leech Seed it. He always switches into Jinx, who has the physical move Ice Punch, so Calm Minds don't really reduce the damage we're taking. And she can put us to sleep with Lovely Kiss. We managed to take her out after a few Giga Drains, only for him to bring out his other 2 Xatu, who both have physical super effective moves in U-turn and Aerial Ace. We're just barely staying alive here because we are in Overgrow, so our Giga Drains do more damage and therefore heal us for more damage. Eventually we can take them both out and in comes his Executor, who we can't Leech Seed because he's a grass type. He ends up putting us to sleep and almost knocking us out with another physical move, Egg Bomb. On the last turn before fainting, we wake up and sweep the rest of his team with Giga Drain. This was a really tough fight and it took a lot of tries. I didn't realize how much of his team was physical. Next up is the Koga fight, and this one is even worse. We now have Dragon Pulse swapped out for Earth Power and are holding the Shell Bell instead of the Wide Lens. From a bunch of failed attempts, I learned that we have to start with 2 Calm Minds and dodge the 30% from Poison Jab twice, before knocking Ariados into the red and setting up a 3rd Calm Mind while he heals. Then, on his next Pokemon Venomoth, we have to set up 3 more Calm Minds, all while it chooses to not Toxic us every turn. Then we can take him out with Dragon Pulse. We need to be at +6 to one-shot the Muck with a Dragon Pulse and passively heal enough damage to tank a Wing Attack from the incoming Crobat who outspeeds us, or land a hit through Double Team if he elects to go through that. Last is Fortress, who luckily can't do anything to us, so we take him out for a hard-fought win. This was the toughest fight so far. I honestly thought it would be easier with Earth Power, but most of his team is actually just neutral to ground, so hopefully the commitment to Dragon Pulse works out for us. I'll definitely need it for Lance anyway. Luckily, Bruno is a nice change of pace. We can resort to our usual strategy of Leech Seed and Calm Mind setup before breezing through his entire team. Good fight, but even the original Meganium did okay here. Bruno is almost never a challenge. It really makes you wonder why they brought him back from the Kanto Elite Four and no one else. Last up is Karen, and this fight actually goes pretty well too, because she leads with Umbreon, who can't do much damage to us, and despite having a lot of Pokemon who hit us super effectively, they're all special attackers, so as long as we have enough Calm Mind set up, we can tank their hits and secure a pretty easy win. Finally, the champion Lance. I'm really happy with how well we tanked the Ice Fangs from his lead Gyarados. We also outspeed, so we don't have to worry about flinching. We managed to set up to +3 before taking him down. I feel like Meganium is generally thought of as slow, but we've been fast enough to outspeed pretty much everything we want to, with exceptions being Pokemon like Crobat and Aerodactyl. In comes the Charizard, and we shockingly outspeed even him, and get a clutch 5% Fire Fang dodge. We would have lived, but we needed to be above half health when the Aerodactyl comes in. Luckily, he sends out a Dragonite in between, so we do get a bit more of health back from the Shell Bell. The Aerodactyl comes in after, who hits a hard Aerial Ace, but we do survive and hit him back with a Giga Drain for the one-shot. And then we outspeed and one-shot his last 2 Dragonites, winning us the battle and crowning us the champions of the Johto region. But there is one more boss fight left, Pokemon Trainer Red atop Mount Silver. I'm gonna set my level cap here to 85, which I feel is fair. His highest Pokemon is actually level 88, but it's a Pikachu, so that's not really fair. Okay, I take that back because this fight is way harder than I was expecting, but it was so satisfying to beat. His Pikachu lead hits way harder than I thought it would with Iron Tail, so we really can't set up on it like I was originally planning. We only get off 1 Calm Mind before taking him out. Right away, he brings out Charizard, who we're actually speed tied with. Usually he outspeeds us and hits us with a hard Flare Blitz, but I'm actually holding an Occa Berry in this fight, which halves the damage from a super effective fire type move, so we can actually survive it. But on this attempt, we win the speed tie, one-shotting him with Ancient Power of all moves, which I swapped out Dragon Pulse for. I thought it was useless before, but we finally have Redemption. Next is his Lapras, which we can actually set up on for a little bit before taking it out. Next is his Venusaur, which originally I had no answer for, until I remembered that I added Nature Power via the move relearner, which, at the peak of Mount Silver, turns into Blizzard, which gets the one-shot. I swear to you, I did not plan this. I did not expect to actually use Nature Power, but we probably could not have won this fight without it. We can outdamage his Snorlax afterward, and we get a clutch crit to seal the deal before one-shotting his final Pokemon Blastoise with a Giga Drain, winning us the battle and the run. This was really fun. I love that every single one of our new moves came in handy at some point. When I was brainstorming this video, I originally didn't plan to do an actual playthrough and just hypothesize how each fight would go, but I'm glad I didn't, because each fight would have been, we just set up with Leech Seed and we win. But many fights were still way harder than I was expecting, like Morty, Will, Koga, and Red. But many other fights were actually very easy, like Claire, Karen, and even Lance. But how do you think we did? Is Chikorita a viable starter option? I mean, yeah, I think so. He can definitely hold his own in most fights, and I'd even say he's definitely the optimal starter choice for boss fights like Chuck, Price, and even Jasmine, since Quilava can't evolve before that fight. Probably Bruno and Lance too, although Lance is a bit debatable. Chikorita still isn't the best starter choice, but that was never our goal. He's still a grass type, so there are still a ton of hurdles for him to overcome, but we've definitely closed the gap a little, and our starter isn't a complete burden for the entire playthrough. But what do you think? Would you change anything else? Be sure to leave a comment down below, as buffing underrated Pokemon is very interesting to me, and I'd love to see what others think. Because that's pretty much why I started this channel. Let me know what other Pokemon you'd like to see in the future, and in which games, because I'll likely be making more videos like this, as well as branching out a bit. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.